Have you ever wondered what it would be like to feel steady and confident in your parenting? Do you ever think about how to truly savor these precious years with your growing people? And perhaps most importantly, do you dream of creating connected relationships that endure beyond childhood? I'm Carrie, and I've spent the last 2 decades guiding, supporting, and inspiring parents to know and trust themselves deeply. And as a result, there are thousands of parents all over the world who feel skillfully equipped, personally fulfilled, and authentically connected with their people in all phases of development. Join me, along with my friend and collaborator, Kristen Manieri, as we explore what it means to not parent. Let's get untangling.
So Carrie, we're back together again, and we're going to be doing 3 episodes on just clarity.
Yes.
It's funny to say just clarity because actually you've been doing this really deep dive reflection recently on your work professionally, but also your life personally, and have come to the realization that at the center of everything is clarity, and more specifically, the work that you do to create clarity.
Yes, it's the foundation. It's the most essential element of everything I do. And I've been really reflecting on that lately. So, you of all people know that I've been on this journey for the last 2 decades of really helping families, helping humans, but really it started with, a deep dive into human development and family life, and really operating from this place of there's no right way to do it, that you have to find your way. And that takes some skill that, when we've grown up around or in a world where we were sent to school and there was kind of a right way to do something or a wrong way, we got graded. And then that was sort of the indoctrination of learning that we did as humans growing up, most of us. This idea of finding clarity from within. There was so much about you learn from the outside, you bring in knowledge, you figure out what the right way to do it is. And that, early on in our human history or, Western society, a lot of that was dictated. It was through religion or through societal and tribal knowing. And so there was a lot of information that was sort of handed to people. And then I'd say in the last 30, 40, 50 years, we started waking up and we started, realizing, wait, there's other ways. And so we didn't really, at that point, we basically shifted to experts, and we wanted to know from the experts, here's the right way to do it. And the idea, especially in parenting for the last, 30 years has been here's the books and here's the people that have done the studying. And, they're the ones that you need to be following, the attachment parenting people, the conscious parenting people. And all of that is wonderful. It's great that we have all this information and all these people that are doing the legwork to help us find healthy ways of relating and operating in life. But what I came to know really early on in my professional life is that you can get so overwhelmed by what comes at you that it's really hard to really sort out what's right and true for one's self. And so very early on in my professional work, when I was sharing information about babies and development and all the great stuff I learned in my PhD, it really came clear. I got clarity on the fact that one of the biggest things I could offer people was the practice of listening and tuning in and hearing the knowing from that deeper place inside of oneself. And so that's been the most consistent thread of my professional life and my personal life for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Regardless of what I have going on in my life, whether I want to find a recipe or I want to figure out how to potty train my child, or I want to know how do you help your kid choose a college. I can go on to a computer or my phone, and I can go get that information. Like, it is so easy to go get information. What I hear you saying and what I've really experienced in my own life is the hard work. And by hard, I mean like effortful. Like, it takes like some bootstrappiness, like some grit, is to actually force myself to close my computer, put my phone away, not call a friend, and just go sit with myself and say, what do I think my child needs in terms of potty training? What do I think my college-age student needs in terms of how they choose where they want to go next, and if they even want to do that? And so what I love about this work is that it's almost like, I feel like it's a renaissance. Like, there's a retraining of us, of this human species, where that's all we used to have. We only ever used to have our intuition and our inner knowing. And now we have so much of the other that I feel like we've lost touch with our intuition and our inner knowing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so easy to be distracted by out there. I mean, there's always a video to watch, and there's always something to go, I'm an insanely curious person. So, the idea that I can get on my phone and ask any question is wonderful. And yet, when it really comes down to how I navigate my own life, I know that it really all does come back to me pausing. We've talked about that. Going inward, or knowing first, like, where am I in time and space? Like, just starting to notice, like, what am I amidst? Like, often I use a lot of different analogies, and the one that feels really vital to this conversation is the idea of coming in for a landing. That we're in this kind of state of forward motion at all times, whether we even know it or not. And like, we're flying the craft of our life, and we're consuming, and we're connecting, and we're doing all this out there energy going forward, but really learning how to stop, like, come in for a landing, pause, take note of the moment, ask ourselves, like, well, how am I handling this moment? Like, what's going on inside of me? Am I steady? Am I wobbly? Am I feeling like I'm like in the driver's seat of this experience, or just kind of being dragged along and flung around? And then with whatever is kind of up, whether it's a change of season, or your people going back to school, or, you have an event in your family life that throws you for a loop, like, there's endless things that are going to be needing our awareness and our clarity. And so sometimes I think the default can be, oh, let me go out there. Let me ask a friend. Let me look online. Let me do these things. Let me even, go to the therapist or the coach. But what I feel like more passionately, I mean, you know me, I'm a passionate person, but like, for some reason, this feels like, you're right. Like, this is our next evolution as humans. Like, this is the next step of not just giving lip service to, no, you go inward, use your intuition, trust your knowing, but like the actual practicals of how to do that. Because it's one thing to say it, and it's one thing to think, oh, well, I know, but I can promise you that if I surveyed all of the people that I've ever done this kind of work with, which is now thousands, they would say that there's a different experience of sitting down and having somebody guide them, me, with prompts, with writing questions and little statements that dive you into something, and then using your actual hand to hear yourself writing or typing, and really going in and hearing what comes through. It's just such a different experience than just thinking it.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend recently, and we were just sort of reflecting on how the brain likes to just sort of be at surface. Like, it doesn't have to use a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And when we, let's just say we're going for a walk, and rather than just going from A to B, we give our brain the job of like, just walk me from this point to that point. We say, and brain, I'd also like you to tune into all of the smells in this forest, or on this trail, or whatever. Well, now it's like, you're going to notice things. Like, you're going to notice, like, oh, wow, it smells like pine over here, or I smell something very soily and earthy and dirty over here. And I say that, I bring that up as an example because I think that like our senses, which we don't fully utilize on a day-to-day basis because we sort of go into automated mode or autopilot. I think our sixth sense, right? Like our intuition, that thing that lives, for me, it's like somewhere between my solar plexus and my stomach, is there too. And all I have to do is like tune into it and be like, hey, you get on the field now. I need you. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. I'll give you some feedback. I'll tell you what I've been thinking. I'll shine a light on a different perspective. And so to me, it's like we have these tools, our five senses, and now knowing we have our sixth sense, but we just don't use them on a regular basis. Because we're just so busy just being humans and doing life. And what I've always loved about the work that you do is like, I get to fire that on. It's like I get to flick that switch and say like, okay, I want to know what you think about what I'm going on. And it's always served me and most often blown my mind.
Yes.
I've written something or said something or thought something and I think, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, where did that come from? And gosh, is that ever true?
Every time. I mean, that's what's so surprising to me. And that's why I get so fired up about this is that I do this, some version of it daily, but the more, let's call it, say, for example, a seasonal writing, like really stopping before heading into a new season and considering what's ahead and deciding, what feels important, what feels meaningful, what deserves my energy, what deserves my commitment, and really getting intentional. I'm always surprised, like some little nugget that I hadn't thought and I hadn't even been feeling, but I created enough space for that truer, deeper inner knowing to be known. And what I've said for years is that, our thinking brain, the thoughts are fast and they're familiar and there's a lot that goes on in the upstairs of our being, this body brain system, and it's keeping us safe and it's surveying the situations, like it's on and it's busy and it's loud. And so I like to at least give that a little bit of time and space to kind of be heard. That's always valuable. And then when I drop in a little deeper and consider what's going on with me emotionally, what's the weather in there? Like, is it blustery? Is it calm? Is it sunny? Is it a little rainy? Like, what is happening inside emotionally? That's always valuable. What am I feeling? And then when I do that, and then I ask myself, all right, now what am I knowing? And sometimes I have to give it a little moment. Like it doesn't always come if I just keep writing. But if I say, okay, I really want to hear from that being part of me, like the part that is beyond this brain, beyond these feelings, this deeper isness that knows things about my experience. It knows that I like to live very minimal, like I do better. It knows I love flowers. It knows that, being by water is really fortifying to me and replenishes me and gives me a sense of safety. Like those are knowings in me. Those are things that I pay attention to and I've heard that I value, and it makes life rich and meaningful. And when I can tune to that, it's like a radio tuner. It's like, oh, I can listen to my thoughts. Sure. Plenty of bandwidth for that. Okay. I can listen to my feelings, but when I go a little deeper and I listen to that knowing, and I really operate from that place that there's no question and no fear that I'm in my knowing, it's like, it brings this sense of, like it's a clarity, which is why I love that word. And it's a sense of alignment. It's like all the things stack up. When I'm in my knowing, what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking kind of falls in line. It's like, oh, okay, right. Being by water is valuable. Oh, I feel calm and soothed and, really alive when I'm near water. Okay. Thinking, oh, I got to get by water. Oh, it's valuable that I live by water. Oh, I'm appreciating all the water around me. And it's like all of a sudden where I might have been a little bit scattered, things kind of stack up and I'm really more present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I hear you saying and what I've learned from you again and again and again over the last 15 years that we've worked together is that clarity is the precursor for everything. It's before I speak, before I make requests, before I take action, before I start writing lists of what I'm going to do next. It really is the genesis of everything that's going to happen afterwards. And it's interesting hearing you speak. It's like, oh yeah, I got clarity on that. Oh yeah, like I'm reflecting back in my life. And it feels like every single time I headed in the really good direction for me and for us as a family, it started with just sitting quietly and tuning in and saying, okay, what's there? What am I feeling? What am I knowing? And then maybe days later, actually opening my mouth and making any requests or comments or whatever to the people that I share my life with. So let's get a real baseline definition, because we've said a lot of words sort of about clarity. But before we go to our next episode, which is going to be talking about why does it matter and what do we get from it? And maybe we can talk a little bit more in the later episode about like, what are the steps? But let's define it. Let's give some really concrete language. So what are we talking about with clarity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what are we talking about with clarity? To me, clarity is this sense of awareness that there's a light that is shining on anything, whatever I'm, if I'm attempting to get clear on something, it's like, it's this gut, heart, head lining up and a forward motion that feels flowing. It feels loose. It feels light. It feels easy. When I'm clear, those are the kinds of things that I'm aware of. I'm confident in my decisions. It may not be how everybody operates, but I have this sense of like, yes, this is the direction, or this is the experiment I want to try next, or this is how I want to meet the next moment. It's a lot about getting clear on my intentions. Like, I know I'm not naive. I know that life is happening and that I can't control out there. But when I have clarity from within on how I want to meet that experience or those experiences, I show up more. I show up more fully. I'm able to handle things a little bit more skillfully. And that feels really good, because it doesn't feel good to me to not be clear and then to feel like I didn't really operate the way I would have liked to have operated. And so I've learned that the hard way, that when I'm not clear, it feels like, I'm sort of at odds with myself. There's thoughts that are saying one thing. A lot of maybe the what if negatives are a lot louder than the what if positives. Or, I'm doubting something, or I'm doubting myself, or I'm worrying. And, that's like the trigger for me to say, oh, I need to get clear here. Like, whether it's going into recording a podcast with you, or offering a new program, or dealing with somebody getting sick, like, it's always a valuable practice to stop and get clear. And the real meaning behind that is to have a vision from within of how I would like to meet the moments, navigate it, and really show up for myself and the people that I care about and the experiences that I'm having.
I love it.
I'm curious, how would you define it?
Gosh, I had this vision in my mind as you were speaking, of like, in my day-to-day life, I've got a flashlight, right? And I'm just pointing it at whatever it is that I'm working on or working out or whatever it is that I'm up to. It's like, I've got this flashlight and right now it's pointed at you, right? It's this thing that you and I are doing together. Clarity is a lantern. And when I can sit and turn on the lantern and get a wider view of what's going on around me, what's going on in me, deeper down, what's driving some of the ways that I'm feeling, I get much more of I think like a 360 perspective than what I can get when I'm just walking around all day long pointing my flashlight at things. So that was kind of the metaphor, the vision that I got in my mind as you were speaking.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And where that sort of leads me at what I want to add to before we wrap this episode up, is what I've come to understand in the 20 plus years. So I'm just going to share a little bit. I shared in the first set of podcasts that we did about my journey of, my professional journey and my life journey. But the clarity piece is really, it's threaded through, but it really comes into more clarity probably when I was in grad school and I was getting my PhD. It was the early 2000s. And a woman that she hired me to help her with her little baby person. And while I was helping her, she said, "Hey, I'm a coach and I do this book. It's called Your Best Year Yet." And she sat me down and we went through the prompts, and I had never done anything like that. And it really gave me this experience of getting clear for the first time. And in doing that, I realized by writing things down, not just the dreams, but really getting in a sense of like, what am I after? What really matters? Like, how do I want to walk in this world? And that practice of doing a yearly checking in, and then that turned into doing it more seasonally. And then it's been woven into everything I do. What it did, it definitely taught me how to dream and taught me how to be intentional and taught me how to appreciate. But what all of that did is it gave me a deeper sense of clarity of what my whole being was all about. Like I use the word mosaic, like the idea of like, what are all these facets of me, my emotional life, my intellectual life, my, every element. It felt like I was discovering myself. And so for me, there's the clarity of what we as ourselves, our isness is all about, which by learning about that, it illuminates how we want to operate. So the clarity is both an inward understanding of self and an outward understanding of how we want to interact with the life beyond this body and brain. And so to me, that's why I think I get so excited about this, and why sometimes I feel like it's a little tricky to talk about, because it's operating on multi levels. Like you can talk about it in terms of like, well, let's just get clear on a situation that we need to embark on. That's fantastic if you only use it for that. But what I love is when you go inward and you're like, all right, well, what am I about? Like, how much energy do I have for guests? How much energy do I have for projects? Like, if I realize that I'm not a perpetual motion machine and I have to be aware of where my energy is going and how I'm getting more in so I can give energy to the things that matter most, and how I can cut out the things that I don't want to give energy to, that takes clarity. And when we do that, and I know you operate from this perspective too, there's a richness and a satisfaction that emerges that I didn't know existed until I really dove in and learned and practiced this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the core of what we're talking about is you can definitely go through life without getting clarity. Just keep acting and choosing and deciding and building and doing all the things that we do. But why would you want to? Right? When you think about how much we get from pausing and getting clear first, it's like, what a different mode of travel. What a great mode of travel. So that's really what we're going to dive into in the next episode, is like, why would it matter?
Right.
And what do we get when we don't get clarity? So I can't wait to dive into that with you, because I think that's going to provide a lot of substance to, what we're talking about here. But this is great. I love being with you again.
I love being with you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Not Parenting. For any resources or offerings we spoke about in the episode, remember you can head to carrieconti.com, or you can click on the links in the episode show notes. Thanks for being here.